Hey everybody, today we've got what I'm going to call an antique chef's knife. This is a made in Germany. It's a brand name, and you can kind of see it there hopefully, is Othello, and it's got the little head there as their insignia. This one looks like it's Utello, but it's actually supposed to be imprinted as an O. I'll look that up and you can see maybe one or two sold on eBay. So length, 17 and a half, 17 3/4 inches total length. And this particular knife was actually used as a butchering knife for cattle. I couldn't tell you how old exactly it is. I will look it up and see if I can find the date. No serial number on this. Apparently it is known as a chef's knife. So it's got a little bit of wear and tear here. So I'll have to do a repair of that. This little discussion has been removed or fallen off. Shouldn't be too difficult to repair. So today we're actually just going to resharpen this blade, clean it up, clean up the handle, kind of do a restoration. So first thing we're going to do is take some alcohol. This is Equate Walmart brand. And I'm going to clean everything off. There's a bunch of animal guts and gunk all over this knife, so we want to clean that off before we go ahead to the Japanese waterstones. So I'll clean off the handle as well because the handle is kind of sticky and I'm not sure what that is exactly. Okay, so it's pretty much cleaned up. So a couple things I want to just kind of go over here. When I first picked up the knife, the first thing that I noticed was actually how light it was. And if you can kind of see here, the reason it's so light is because the blade tapers considerably. So it has quite a bit of flex at the end, towards the end of the blade. Wooden handle, so it's not going to gain a lot of weight at this end. But generally, it's very light, so I expect that somebody would be able to hold this for quite a bit of time without getting tired. The other thing I noticed is that the sharpening of the blade isn't really straight, so we're going to have to actually correct that. It's probably going to be difficult to see that in the camera, but there's a little bit of a bow to it inward in the middle. So we'll fix that up as well. And then kind of one of the things that I don't like to do, some people may differ in opinion, but is I prefer to leave the character, the patina on the actual blade or whatever it is that I'm actually trying to restore. It takes quite a bit of time to develop the patina on these knives and blades, and it doesn't take very long to remove it. So the best thing to do, in my opinion anyway, is just to leave it as much as you can. Obviously if it's rusted, you want to be able to clean off all the rust. Not sure what exactly these marks are. They may be animal parts again. So we'll see how that cleans up. And there's also kind of a nice, what looks like a tempering color in here. It's probably not. It's probably the tempering's long worn off, but there's a yellow and a bluish tinge to the blade, which I kind of like. So we'll kind of keep that. Another thing that I noticed with this blade is that, it would have been used to chop through bones or, hard animal parts. So the top of it has been, beat up a little bit. It's not too bad actually. So maybe hit with a mallet every once in a while, or hit with some other implement that they had handy. All right, so let's get started with the sharpening. See what we can do. Hey guys, so I actually switched the camera angle just so you can see me sharpening, just because I'm right-handed and I like to sharpen a particular way. So this is a Japanese water stone, 700 grit. It's actually a ceramic stone. So if you're going to be taking down a lot of material, you want to start with a more abrasive grit, of course. Otherwise, you're just wasting your time. And just work your way up through that. You don't need to use a water stone. You can use sandpaper on a piece of glass. You can use sandpaper on a granite flat stone if you have that. You could probably even sharpen on a piece of wood if you had a hard enough piece of wood and it was flat. Okay, let's get going. So the blade is so long that it's going to actually be kind of difficult from that perspective. Try and find your angle. Use up as much of the stone as you can. Keep it flat. Hopefully you can see that. So it's going to take a while to get this down. We also need to restore the point at the end of the blade as well. Not critical, you don't typically cut with the point, but that should have been there in the first place, so we'll bring that back. I have to actually take this down quite a bit more on this end, so I'm going to focus on this end here. So again, just for even wearing, you want to be able to take your water stone, turn it around every once in a while, or take the whole block and turn it around if you can. And just get even wearing on your stone. Okay, so I'm going to continue. I'm just going to pause it here, continue along, and I'll update you as I get a little bit further along. Okay, so the good thing about sharpening is that you have a lot of time to think. So I was thinking, why is it taking me so long? Well, the reason it's taking me so long is because if you have a sharp blade, it's easy to keep it sharp. But if you have a dull blade or a blade that's needing some rework, it's not easy and it's extremely time consuming. So basically keep your blade sharp, sharpen it once a week, depending on how much you use it, and then you won't be doing this for hours and hours at a time. You're also going to need some decent quality stones to do that. Keep them nearby, keep them in your kitchen, do it in your sink. That works well for me. Okay, checking back here. So you can see I'm making some progress at the end, still need some work. So I'm looking to get the whole edge covered and reflattened, and then of course just kind of try and redefine that point. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get the whole thing done. It's a lot of metal to remove, and it seems to be quite a hard metal, so it's not removing the metal very quickly. Okay, I'll continue along. Well, we're getting close. I'm not sure we're going to get that pocket completely, but we'll see what we can do. Get a little bit further along. So just an update here, we're getting pretty close. I don't think I'm going to take too much more off of it. We'll have to do the same to the other side. I should say for us, what we want to do is actually put this into our set of knives that we're going to be using. And with that being said, I'm going to be sharpening on a regular basis. So eventually these little imperfections here will go away. Here there's you can't really see it. There's a small nick here, maybe two. If I can't get them out completely, I'm not too worried about that at this point, because I'm going to be sharpening them on a fairly regular basis. But it depends on what you want to do and how much time you want to put into it. But you can see already kind of a substantial change from what there was on the other side there. So this side has a pretty uneven sharpening. I assume that the butcher or whomever was using it before would just quickly do a sharpen and then get back to work. For us, we're going to have something that looks nice and it works really well. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next side and do the exact same steps. I'll be looking for a little burr to appear on one of the edges, so you should be able to feel it as you drag your finger towards you on the blade. So that will mean that you've touched the entire cutting edge of that blade and you're ready to move on to the next step, and that will be a finer grit of stone. Okay, so I'm making my pretty good progress on both sides now. It just barely touched at this corner, this edge here, very similar to the other side. So I'm not going to go too much further than that. I just want to make sure I get the edge. And if you feel here, there's a burr, like I talked about earlier, developing. So that's what you're looking for. You want to look for that across the entire edge. So I don't have a burr everywhere, so I'm going to work a little bit harder, a little bit longer, and get that burr everywhere before I move on to the finer grit. So with the original side, first side, you do your sharpening this way, whatever's comfortable for you. And you can see how you're using this section on a diagonal here. So that's going to prematurely wear down your stone in that area. When you switch to the other side, you hopefully can do this. And now you're going to be much more even wear pattern on your stone. It will need less flattening and will last you longer. So the one thing about this strategy is that it's more awkward. If you are dominant right hand, this will be more difficult to do it this way. Okay, let's move on to the next step. So here's a 3000 grit ceramic waterstone. I don't have anything in between. It would be better to have something in between these two sizes. But now that we've done the majority of the flattening, it won't take too much more work to actually get this nice edge polished up. And from there, we'll move over to a leather strop and do the final polishing, and you'll get more or less a mirror finish on there. So this is an example why you don't want to start with a fine grit stone like this. It took me approximately an hour to get both of these sides the way that they are currently. So if you were to use a fine stone like this, a 3000 grit stone, you know, you'd be here for 5 hours trying to do the same job. So just do yourself a favor and buy the proper stone set, you know, and it'll pay off, save you time. So again, you want to have a light burr on that edge, and you will keep on working that burr back and forth. And you don't necessarily need to, but using a leather strop will actually remove that burr. It's not necessarily the best method. I've heard the best method is to actually just continue to use finer and finer stones until the burr finally disappears, leaving the most fine edge you can possibly have. But I don't have enough stones to do that job. So I'm going to use a polishing compound. I'll show you that a little bit later on. So at this point, if you had a finer grit, you would go ahead and use that. I do not have a finer grit, so I would actually jump over and use the leather strop for the polishing compound. For this leather strop, I'm using this polishing compound I've had for years and years. I'm not even sure really what grit this is, to be honest with you, but it does seem to polish up nicely. If you have trouble loading your leather strop, so this is a piece of leather, vegetable tan leather, just attached to a piece of beechwood, sized to about the same size as the stones that I have here. So if you have trouble loading this, you can actually use oil. It seems like just about any oil. So I've used canola oil. And when you put the canola oil on, you'll notice that this seems to be soluble, like oil soluble. And it will allow it to actually more evenly be distributed onto the leather itself. And you only need to do it once or twice, and then it seems to load up very well afterward. So load it up. I'll show you the edge before. So the edge is very nice already. It is very sharp already. Let's see if we can get it even better. So the way I like to do this, I never push against this polishing compound. Not only because I believe that it would dull the edge, but you probably will cut into the leather itself. So I always do this on the pull stroke, and you should start to see the leather get dark, meaning that there's small metal particles building up on that surface there. And we should end up with fairly close to a mirror finish when we're done. When you have enough buildup, you can either go over top of this black again with more polishing compound, or you can remove it with a small knife, straight edge, something metal, and then recoat. Very difficult to see that edge there. It's getting to be very polished. Again, just do it on the pull. So one thing, if you work with the leather, you'll notice it has a little bit of give to it. So it will form to the contours of the metal. Even if it's in a regular shape. If you're not too big of a fan of the handwork, you can actually go ahead and you can actually mount an MDF piece to your grinder. Use the same polishing compound and basically run this along your grinder edge, and that will give you a really keen edge, really sharp edge. So you can see I have a buildup here. I'm going to get rid of that buildup and reapply. Reapply. So we're at nearly a mirror finish on those edges there. You may or may not be able to tell, but I was able to remove most of that bow in the blade. Not all of it, but that will come over time. So let's give it a test. So one more test you want to do, you may want, or you may not want to do this, is to see how well it shaves. It's always a good test for sharpness. Fortunately, you're not going to have much arm hair left if you like that kind of thing. Also, if you're going to shave with the knife, don't eat with the knife until you sanitized it. So you can see, pretty clean. There you have it. Thanks for watching.